Hey there, LBT Squad, I'm your host Alex Pop, and this is part 2 of the series that will give my closing thoughts on the Land Before Time 14 Journey of the Brave, and then we'll get started on looking ahead on what's to come for the Land Before Time series. In the last video, I listed the top 10 things that bugged me about the movie, but despite all those problems, there were a lot of other things that really enthralled me. There were a lot of Land Before Time-esque elements that made it a worthy addition to the franchise. So here are the top 10 best of all those elements. Number 10 is the scene where Wild Arms is introduced to Chomper. Now, I do think that the comic relief in a lot of kids' movies nowadays relies too much on characters that are really hyper and fast-talking, but Wild Arms was better than most. I chuckled sometimes at his antics, but the scene where Chomper and Ruby join the search party was the only scene with him that gave me a good deal of laughter. Two bits in particular, the first being when Sarah's dad says, "We're going into a land filled with sharp teeth, we don't need another," and Wild Arms goes, "Yes, finally someone who's sensible, up top." And Sarah's dad, who of course walks on all fours, just glares at him like, "Do I look like I'm even physically capable of giving you a high five?" The other funny bit was the line from Sarah's dad when Wild Arms passes out when Chomper gets close to him. Well, I knew I'd end up carrying him sooner or later. Well, nothing else really to say, I just found that part funny. Number 9 is the inclusion of some of the old musical tracks from Michael Tavera. Now you know that I was really disappointed that none of James Horner's original soundtrack was featured in the movie. But there was still a sense of sweet nostalgia when an old Tavera track from previous sequels was incorporated, such as Genesis E from the Great Lonic Migration when the kids save Bran, or the swimming Sharptooth music during the U-Tyrannus chase. But most notably, when the gang falls asleep during the trip, we get the old bedtime theme from the Great Valley Adventure. Upon hearing that music worked in with that scene, I had to tell myself, okay, come on, save the waterworks for later. Number 8 is most of the new voice cast, that being Felix Avisha, Isaac Ryan Brown, and George Ball. I was really impressed by their voice work. I was confident that Felix Avisha would do really well as Littlefoot after hearing him in the trailer, and sure enough he did. Isaac Brown did an equally good job as Chomper, and I thought George Ball filled the shoes of John Ingle pretty well. His voice is noticeably different, but his inflections were still reminiscent of Ingle when he voiced Sarah's dad. It was certainly a different story with Barry Bostwick replacing Kenneth Mars as Grandpa, but regarding Littlefoot, Chomper, and Sarah's dad, I think they found the best replacements they could have. Number 7 is Today's the Day, and I mean as, like, an entire sequence. My favorite song in the movie is actually Look for the Light, but with the story starting to get going, this musical scene added to the euphoria that I had now that I had finally arrived at the day that I'd been anticipating all year, or more appropriately, for 8 years. And at the same time, it gave us a reintroduction to all of the characters just doing their thing, Sarah bragging about her strength, Petrie being his clumsy self, and Ducky being a devoted sister to her newborn siblings. Though I have to ask, how many brothers and sisters does Ducky have at this point? This, plus the first movie, plus the Great Valley Adventure, she has to have around 25 now. I guess duckbills are the rabbits of the prehistoric world. Number 6 is the scene where Littlefoot and the gang exit the cave via the moving water. Because of how well the conflict between Littlefoot and the rest of the gang was handled, I really felt it when they reunited and made up. And then the last leg of the trip practically does the rest for them. It just carries them to where they need to be. The music, the animation of the crystals and the reflections of the light on the water, and just the triumphant feeling of, now they're really getting somewhere. It may not have been quite as magical as, say, in Journey Through the Mist when they find the Nightflower, but I still enjoyed the scene tremendously nonetheless. Number 5 is the character of Etta. You may actually remember I said in my review for the movie that I didn't find her particularly memorable. Now that I look back, I honestly don't know why I said that, because Etta is a really memorable and very endearing character, with her playfully sarcastic and condescending demeanor. Nope, not dead. You still got time to learn to listen. She had other funny moments, like when she meets Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, and Spike, she's just totally nonchalant about the fact that there's a Sharptooth attacking them. She's just like, "Hey, sorry to bother you, but can I just have a moment of your time?" So she's certainly one of the better new characters we've gotten in recent installments, and I just like how motherly she is to Littlefoot. I could see, like in the next movie, when she leaves the Great Valley with Bran's herd, Littlefoot saying something to her along the lines of, "You've been like a mother to me." It may be kind of hard for him to say that, but it would be very touching. Number 4 is simply the fact that Littlefoot, Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, and Spike are back, and their personalities are all intact. The Wisdom of Friends was filled with such witless and unfunny babble between them that I couldn't even buy them as the characters I knew. And also, because of the new writing team, I was just a little worried about how their chemistry would be handled in this movie. But to my utmost pleasure, they were embodied really well, their personalities shine through, and throughout their journey I thought, yeah, this is the stuff they do. Littlefoot and Sarah might disagree on how to accomplish something, Spike would get distracted by food, and Ducky might state the obvious, with Petrie adding even more obviousness. It's moments like these that really made me feel like I was having a reunion, so major props to Cliff Ruby and Elena Lesser. I hope that they stay on board for future sequels. Number 3 is the build-up to finding Bran, primarily the moments right before the gang does so. If this was just a totally sugar-coated kids movie, this scene would have had the feeling of, yay, this is so happy, they're really close to finding Littlefoot's dad. But instead, it takes a more edgy and apprehensive approach. As they near the ledge where Etta saw Bran fall, you can see it on Littlefoot's face as he thinks to himself, I may not like what I see, but I'm going to. As he runs forward to look over the ledge, the music, mixed in with Petrie nervously shouting Littlefoot's name, made me truly start to think that Littlefoot's dad might really be dead. You might think I should have taken into account that Scott White had been announced to voice Bran, and he didn't have any speaking parts prior, but in that moment you kind of forget. I will add that if they had chosen to kill off Bran, it would have been a very haunting and meaningful death to see Littlefoot and his friends come all that way to find that they're too late. Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, and Spike might fear that Littlefoot would once again condemn them for slowing him down, but he doesn't, knowing what he had learned. I am still glad that they didn't kill off Bran here, because I could see a lot more being done with him, so I hope that the writers have something in mind for the future by keeping him alive. Number 2, the opening narration from Toni Amendola. Now, because of the long gap in between films, I was really unsure if the previous movies were going to be studied or even acknowledged. From this first scene alone, I knew that I had nothing to fear. I was expecting that it would start off, as always, with the brief introduction to the dinosaur world, and at first that's what you get, but then suddenly it swerves. It takes a deviation from formula by telling newcomers to the series everything they need to know about what's taken place before this movie. And at the same time, it assures old fans like myself that there is respect here for the other movies, by giving us a recap of how Littlefoot came to live with his friends and grandparents in the Great Valley, and how he chose to continue his life in the Great Valley after meeting his dad for the first time. And Littlefoot's mother gets the acknowledgement, that's always a plus. And I have to add something that I neglected to address before. At first I wondered why there are more than just Longnecks in Bran's herd, but when I thought about it, Bran's herd formed right after the Great Earthshake. So we're seeing that the Great Earthshake has had similar effects on everyone caught up in it. They all realize that they have to pull together for survival. And it honestly kind of makes the flashback scene in the Stone of Cold Fire more plausible. And it makes sense that in the Great Longneck Migration, only the Longnecks from Bran's herd went with him to the Longneck Valley, as we hear Bran say to Littlefoot, I can't wait to introduce you to the herd back home. This is inaccurately represented at the beginning of Journey of the Brave, but I guess it's the thought that counts. All in all, the opening narration immersed me back into the LBT universe instantaneously, and that earns it second place on the list. And the number 1 greatest thing about Journey of the Brave is Littlefoot's character arc. This is what it's all about, seeing these characters go through some sort of change, or rather, to evolve, pun intended. It starts with Littlefoot being aware of how great a risk he's taking by venturing out to find his father, and instead of asking his friends to come along, he decides to go alone, but then they catch up with him and insist that they help out. And like I said, the writers pulled off the characters' personality traits and tendencies really well, and it especially works to this movie's advantage. Because this is such a personal journey for Littlefoot, things the others would do to slow down trips in the past that he would just work with now really aggravate him here, like Sarah bickering with him about the best way to overcome an obstacle, or Spike wandering off to eat or falling asleep too soon. Natural things you see them do all the time now really get to him. And it was pretty emotional when it finally got to the point where Littlefoot just lost his patience with them. But then he gets inspiration when hearing about how his dad risked his life for every member of his herd, and recognizes that he's as much at fault for their lack of progress for leaving them behind. And ultimately, he comes to the realization that between him and his friends, there's no separating them. And that's really what enthralled me about this movie. To give a brief summary, it's a great tribute to the Gang of Five and everything we love about them. To conclude, if I were to place the movie on a percentage scale, I would rate it at a 74%, a very good LBT movie. In fact, I now consider it the real 13th film in the franchise. So, let me know in the comments what you enjoyed most about Journey of the Brave, and I will return soon for the final part, in which I'll be analyzing the evidence for and against The Land Before Time continuing on from here. That's a wrap for now. If you liked this and you want to see more, slap the like button, subscribe for future videos, and follow us on Facebook. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Alex Pop. Catch you later.